So,
Hi, Joe.
here we are.
Scott?
Fancy seeing you two here.
Yeah, how did you get here?
4. There's the unicorn.
All right.
There's the
So,
unicorn, the old spirit animal. Keep me alive these days. Yeah, what are we going to talk about this week? We should probably talk about what happened in Texas.
yeah.
Um,
Does everybody know what happened in Texas? Or is it just one more of those things?
I think in this case they do. I mean, mass shootings in the United States, yeah, there's something every week, right? But this is the worst since Sandy Hook in a school in terms of death toll, et cetera, et cetera.
Second, behind Sandy Hook, yeah.
Yeah, 19 kids, 22, 21, 2 teachers.
Mm.
They've also, I don't even keep up with records about death tolls and stuff, but all are agreed it's the most atrocious thing in 10 years. It's been 10 years since Sandy Hook, 2012. I think it was December 2012.
Mm-hmm.
It was the first topic we talked about, actually, our first Behind the Headlines podcast,
Oh, yeah?
pre-video days
Wow.
in early 2013. It was still going on, so to speak. But at least there was still a lot of speculative analysis on the interwebs for weeks and weeks after, because it was novel. It was a new low, I suppose. There obviously had been the Columbine High School massacre in 1999, which was a kind of a horrible milestone. It was a high school, though, and it was fairly clear that 2 or 3 or more with other kids may have been involved too, peripherally. It was pretty clear who did it, what their crazy grunge head motivations for doing it were, there were still some historical points of interest that are worth looking into, but it's more or less, it was wrapped up at the time, but it still was, anyway, my point simply was a high media event because it was so burst on the scene. Well, many mass shootings happened in the meantime, and they got worse and worse in a sense. The death toll seemed to climb in these shootings. The weapons maybe got better.
Probably not.
The speed with which they occurred, it was a very short time scale. Because, of course, authorities in the United States, police and other authorities, began to get wise to them and respond quicker, better overall. And so when they happened faster and faster in the execution of them. You know what I mean? Anyway, Sandy Hook, though, is a marker because it was in an elementary school. They're such young children. They're helpless. And it's obviously, the more innocent the victim, the more emotional the reaction to it.
It's an interesting in a macabre kind of way, but an interesting sociological
Trajectory or development.
Sociological development or sociological, yeah. Because, like you said, they've increased a lot in the past 20 years and in the US, and, it's reasonable to ask what that actually means, if anything, what it means, what conclusions you draw from it, from a society where, more and more, there's more and more people being produced by that society that go out and slaughter other members of society, and including children.
Yeah.
Sure, there are only a very small number of people, but what does it say? It's a very good question. It's something that should be looked into, but it's also not something that's easily solved. Even if you do draw some tentative conclusions, what are you going to do about it? It's systemic. Essentially, it has to be. I suppose the conclusion will have to be that it's in some way systemic within society, or systemic tends to mean kind of from the roots up, but it's probably more like from the top down. You know what I mean? It's you'd point the finger at governance, overall governance and guidance by authorities in the US in terms of how the impact they're having on society, and how they're shaping society, and how the society that they're overseeing is producing an increasing number of mentally disturbed citizens.
Psychopathic.
Yeah, citizens, or even just mentally disturbed. You know what I
Okay.
mean? Seriously mentally disturbed. And of course,
Yeah.
you get charted. It's a broad topic. You charted with the use of the increasing use of antidepressants and others, kind of psychoactive
Yeah.
medications and stuff.
There's a lot of well-worn commentary about this, and one of them is drugs and the treatment of mental health, mental illness issues, and catching people before they, not so much in the pre-crime sense of punishing anyone before acting on intent, but rather, stopping someone if possible. Like an obvious one that's straight off the bat, obvious question here. The first one would be, how does someone who is so obviously mentally unhinged acquire 2 assault rifles a couple of days, just a few days, literally just as he turned 18? Ostensibly, he's walked into a local store, and he's a known character. He's known as a truant. He didn't graduate high school this year, which he should have. Local high school in this town, Uvalde in Texas. He walks into a store just before the massacre and gets 2 assault rifles. So there's an obvious one. And I don't know how to frame it exactly, because is it the fault of the vendor? Is the vendor simply a greedy company? Does not pick someone out in the company, but the company as a whole, are they themselves not having any kind of discretion about who they sell 2 assault rifles to? If some guy comes in with like dark eyeliner around his eyes, bags under his eyes because he's doing drugs and staying up all night, obviously he looks young, so you check his ID. Oh, he's turned 18 yesterday. You probably also heard of him. You know him. He's a truant. He's gone around. He's known for going around and been picked up by police. He had no criminal record, but he's known to police for going around shooting a BB gun at people with his mates. So a known quantity in a small town of 16,000 people walks into one of, 2 or 3 gun stores there. And the vendor doesn't kind of go, just be on your way. Before we get the law into this, what gun control, and there's a lot said about, we need new laws. But the problem is in Texas, it's just too damn liberal. Surely, when it comes down to practical matters, cash for guns in Texas, as in anywhere else in the United States, irrespective of what the letter of the law says, surely there's a common sense quantity going on where the vendor looks at someone and says, you best leave. You know what I mean? Anyway, that's been repeated as fact. No one has challenged that. There's no reason to doubt that. That is apparently what happened. He just walked in and walked out with 2 AR-15, something like that, assault rifles.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's your first question. How the hell did he get them?
Yeah.
I don't give a shit what the law says. Texas. I don't care how free and, I don't care about the Second Amendment in this sense, How did he get them? Seriously. So the other issue is, well, it's related. It's a sub-issue. How did he buy that much bloody ammo? Now, there's a discrepancy because I'm not going to, cast any
conspiracy theories.
No. We should. I'm going to try and this as little as possible. But there is a slight one. Namely, he went into that store on 2 days, bought 2 rifles, and walked out. It's known exactly. There's a receipt. I guess someone has a receipt with something like 400 or 500 rounds, matching rounds that would work from those weapons. On the day, he drops a bag outside before entering the premises of the elementary school in Uvalde, containing 1,600. It's a figure I'm hearing from AP. 1,600 rounds. That's a wee arsenal there now. And so, did he go on another occasion? We don't know about yet. Kind of but it's a follow-on related question. How does a locally known punk, acquire a fucking arsenal? Legally, because that's what he did over the counter from the local shop. Illegally, I mean, this is Texas, Mexico territory. I mean, and the government has some responsibility in the broadest sense here because of Operation, what was it? Fast and Furious. Where there were all kinds of gun running, some of it being done officially by the United States to manage and buy off gangs on either side of the border to prevent some from getting weapons by giving them to others. It was a crazy, crazy idea. Anyway, the upshot of that is 10 years of Obama administration policy is the place is awash in weapons anyway. But then you go, well, he could have got them anywhere. That he got them legally kind of becomes irrelevant. But that's been put in there from the get-go on day one of this official story. So anyway, I want to say something else before we go on like any further. Like these things, this has already started with some internet analyses of this event. I'm seeing it on Twitter a little bit, not so much, thankfully. Sandy Hook was also a marker because it spawned the counter narrative that the event was fake. Fake blood, fake children, fake teachers, fake actors, blah-de-blah-de-blah. And some people bear more responsibility for pushing that nonsense than others. The upshot of it was some legal cases brought against them. Alex Jones is the most famous case. He has since, retracted that. He just doesn't. He says, "I apologize. I was wrong," and he dropped it in his defense. But that kind of bullshit, just so YouTube knows, we're not like in any way going near that. It's horseshit. It's basically horseshit. We've also discussed this in the past, where it's an interesting phenomenon in itself. It's a kind of, we suspect that this kind of tendency to counter speculate against everything the authorities say, absolutely everything, is a kind of an extreme emotionally based reaction to it. We've seen it also in the Boston bombing incidents, where there was a kind of, in response to the atrocity, it's in your face, it's real, it's happening, people actually balk and they go, no, I can't believe where they don't want to go where it's possibly being suggested to them it's going, which is that the people in the perpetrators may not have acted alone, and thus the authorities possibly are leaving out some key part of a picture of what actually took place. And anyway, they end up fleeing into this other venue where it's actors. I know the government, the people who perpetrated this just staged the whole thing. So we're not in any way suggesting,
although
that kind of
I mean, we have in the past picked up on evidence in several of these mass shootings where there was initial reports, at least, of more than one person shooting.
Yes.
That when the story always resolved down to it was a lone wolf, a single person who did the shooting. That's the end analysis. But before that analysis is reached, there's evidence that there's more than one person, and there are many of these shootings where those initial evidence. Now you can put that down to confusion and stuff, but the ones we've looked at, there is at least some of them. There's reasonable evidence that there was other people involved, and this is where you get into kind of conspiracy theories, where that it was that the person who was doing the that it was basically a put-up job. Essentially, it was the person who did the shooting and went down for it was effectively a patsy. He was put up to do it. I mean, he's obviously a participant. He did do some shooting, let's say, but that he had help, and it depends on the situation. How much help he had or whatever. But you can see how authorities, if the people, if you go with the conspiracy theory, now not the conspiracy theory that you outlined earlier on there, which was that it's all fake blood, nobody died, all that kind of stuff, it's actors, all that kind of stuff, that was nonsense. But the idea that there was someone else, there could have been someone else involved, shepherding these very often young people, young guys who don't have much. Thinking of Sandy Hook here, Adam Lanza went to
19
years old.
And now this Ramos guy was 18.
Yeah, Adam Lanza, Sandy Hook, really dweeby guy. You couldn't even imagine him holding a very large gun, never mind shooting one.
Autistic.
Kind of autistic-y, no experience really with shooting. Went once or twice with his mom to a shooting range or something like that. And then he goes in and, the whole Sandy Hook situation. And there's evidence, there was eyewitness reports of other people around involved in the Sandy Hook shooting. Now you can see how authorities, when they conclude, if they have that evidence that there was someone else, but they don't have those people, and there's the people who disappeared, the helpers disappear. You can't admit. You have to. It has to resolve down to just the lone gunman narrative, because you can't say yes, there were 2 or 3 other people involved in this. With, for example, in Sandy Hook with Adam Lanza, but we don't know where they are. You can't just leave it like that.
No.
So, and if you know you're not going to get them because somewhere along the chain of command you know that these people have, clearance, let's say, in somewhere or other. They're
Yeah.
effectively, they have authority, that they're people who can disappear. Then you're not gonna, you're just gonna ignore them. You're gonna airbrush them out of the narrative, basically. You know, whether or not that's the case with this most recent shooting, I don't know. There doesn't seem to be any initial
No.
reports of other people involved, etc., etc.
No.
But-
We didn't even look at this when it first, because it seemed so open and shut. There was a basic story given on the day it happened. When did it happen? 4 days ago? Was that Tuesday?
Mm.
I think it was Tuesday, 24 May. Today's 29. Okay, so 5 days ago. It seemed open and shut. I mean, there's one guy. It's one classroom in a small school. That's actually since been expanded to 2 classrooms, although there was an adjoining door between them. So, okay, more or less one large room, let's say, with a division. And the victims are all in those 2 classrooms. The police later storm it and they shoot him dead. And so, such that by the time there's breaking news, at least maybe not nationally, but certainly in international media, it's wrapped. The perpetrator is dead. The number of victims are known, although there was one update to increase it. But still, that's within the space of 1 day.
Mm-hmm.
The scale of it, where it took place, the number of victims, and roughly how it happened was all delivered in 1 day. That when you get that small, the whole package more or less in one news report, well, that's the first thing you hear within a day, even within 2 days. That's usually the end of the story.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason that's brought back to my attention to look a little closer was because of yesterday's news, when it turns out that an earlier statement given at a press conference in Uvalde, Texas, by the chief of police, Stephen McGraw, I think he's chief of police. He's also been described as the DPS.
Director of Public.
I'm not sure what
Director-
DPS stands
Director-
for. At first I thought it was like a prosecutor, but no, that can't be right.
No.
He's police. Anyway, Stephen
Something police
McGraw,
services.
his face has been on the media. He's in trouble now anyway, because he gave an initial statement putting a united front between all responding agents, federal, state and local, whoever got there on the scene, and that we'd all work together, and the threat was neutralized. And that's what you would do regardless of what happened anyway. I suppose it's understandable. You're not going to immediately start with a fight. Anyway, that was earlier on. 4 days later, yesterday, we see the news that actually there's a major spat going on, namely that there had been a much earlier arrival than the first impression they gave of responding officers, and that they were Border and Customs federal agents who arrived. And in the reporting of it yesterday, it's very much looking like the local police are being hung out to dry, because they're now saying that the police, local police, including this guy, I presume, under his authority, Steve McGraw, delayed a federal response to the shooting. I don't know yet if that made a difference. The delay is significant, though. It's 45 minutes. And now we're getting a different timeline.
Mm-hmm.
That's in itself probably the most important thing. It's when the timeline is changing to such a degree that you can have a very different story from one day to the next, such that on day one, there's an apparently open and shut, fairly straightforward story that's given internationally. Such day 4 days later, it's very different.
Mm-hmm.
That is usually something, it's in itself, it's a red flag. Where these highly mediatized events have such changing timelines to the point they're so nebulous, you don't even know what to hang it on anymore,
Yeah.
Okay, sub-headline here. Local officers reportedly delayed U.S. Border Patrol agents from going after the gunman by about 45 minutes. So they were there, they wanted to go for him, but they were told, no, wait, stay back. Did that make a difference? In the latest timeline, some shots were fired
After
during that period of waiting.
Mm-hmm.
it's unknown. Probably won't be known for a while until forensics and coroner's reports come in, whether or not there were any more victims after that. The bulk of the shooting seems to have been quick in the initial shooting. Thus, the bulk of the victims were either wounded or killed at the beginning. What's interesting is that the difference between the locals police force and the federal agents' story is that the federal agents wanted to go in, and they were told by the local police, no, there's no need to.
That was the border.
They entered
border
into
patrol.
negotiation, one report says.
But there was no communication from the guy. And so they didn't actually negotiate with him at all. There was no communication between them and him. But yeah, cops arrived within 4 minutes of the guy actually going into the school, or 4 minutes after the guy was into the school. They're probably, I mean, it's hard to know exact details, but there was probably shooting after that fact. The cops some cops tried to go in, came under fire supposedly, and backed away, saying we need backup, etc. Within a short period of time after that, like just minutes really, Border Patrol came, and the Border Patrol have, more equipment basically to deal with it effectively, similar to like let's say a SWAT team basically, but the local police are supposedly, were told them that they're not allowed to go in. So you have all these people outside, massed outside, and they know there's shooting going on in an elementary school. They're getting phone calls from kids telling them that, please come, there's people dead in here, and they do nothing for basically an hour. And they don't allow, local police don't allow Border Patrol agents who have, like I said, the equipment probably, to deal with that kind of situation to go in. And they're waiting, the official story is they're waiting on a SWAT team.
Yeah.
And the SWAT team doesn't arrive for an hour or thereabouts, by which time it's kind of all done.
There were 19 of them in the hallway.
19 what?
There were 19 armed officers of various local to federal agents in the hallway. That's another question. Why did they not attempt
Exactly.
to go after him?
Well, you just break down a door. You know what room
Earlier.
he's in, you break down the door and you go in.
Yeah.
And you shoot him.
Which
So
is
you
what
stop
they
him
ended
coming
up
out.
doing anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
So why did they not do it before?
What they had to go, well, they eventually had to go and get a key from the janitor.
Yeah.
And that took about, about an hour or something. So eventually when they find the key, and there's a school that's actually running, there are kids in it, teachers in it, they've, obviously a lot of them have, some of them have escaped or are outside and stuff, and no one can find the key to this room. And anyway, why do you need a key? You know those no-knock entries basically that police do? How long does it take police to, when they do the no-knock entry into your house, how long does it take them to knock down your door in the US? Very short period of time. The idea that they couldn't knock down a classroom door in an elementary school is ridiculous.
It's odd. So I'm going to try and find a real explanation that they won't otherwise share. They were scared. They were scared because there was suppressing fire. He apparently fired towards the hallway, and enough to make them fear for their lives that they could not just storm it. At some point, though, they apparently could. Remember the classrooms in question have windows to the other side. No attempt was made to breach or to take a shot at them from outside.
Yep.
Okay, about the janitor and the key. Can you put up the one I just sent you, Scott, from CNN? Okay, scroll down to... can you do a search? We are still... Search for establish. Okay, so hang on. Before I read what he says, the person speaking here is Uvalde Police Chief Daniel Rodriguez, issuing a statement 3 days ago.
Up there. Issue a statement. Top paragraph.
Yeah. Oh, excuse me. No, it's not. It's someone else called Olivares. I'm trying to remember who he is. Probably local police as well. Anyway, this is a named official. He says, we're still trying to establish if the classroom was locked. And if it was locked, was there some type of barricade? Was there some type of locking mechanism that did not allow those officers to make entry?
Mm-hmm.
He's still trying to establish, but it's already been established as a media fact in the timeline from day one that was a fact. But the guy who was there still doesn't know. That's the kind of discrepancy, in a thing that starts to become nebulous, where you have to. Well, you start to wonder who put it out as a fact on day one. You know.
Mm-hmm.
And then you find out from a named person who was actually there. Actually, we don't ourselves know.
Yeah. Well, maybe confusion, all that kind of stuff, because the local police chief actually was on TV giving a presser the day after, or whatever, saying that there's a local, whatever they call them, patrol officer or whatever, in the school. Basically, there was an armed officer in their school, and that he exchanged gunfire with the shooter, right? So, because that's the whole point of having an armed, plainclothes, I suppose, police officer on school premises during school hours is in the event of a school shooting, and he can try and do something about it. But and the police chief said that he exchanged gunfire with him, but then afterwards he said actually he didn't. So
Yeah.
where did that information come from? Somebody, who knows? I mean, that's confusion. We know an awful lot about the fog around these events immediately afterwards in the media storm, where there's all sorts of information put out that it ends up not being factual. But certainly, you can see why it would give rise to conspiracy theories, because that provides a perfect ground for someone to, to get their facts straight, to have several days to get their facts straight, and to talk to people and let people know what the official story is going to be, The interesting thing is, there's one report at least, but it seems to be the case. If you just put up the Yahoo News one I sent the other Scotty, police training experts say if Uvalde police didn't storm the school, they weren't following standard protocol. Policing experts said that if officers didn't engage the gunman, they weren't violating training. Witnesses said parents begged officers to go into the elementary school while the gunman was inside. If someone was shooting, there was no let's pause and get back up, one expert told the Insider. These are experts on police training who supposedly give police training and know that when you give police training, the orders, the procedure to follow when there's an active shooter in a school is you don't hang around and wait. The available armed law enforcement officers go and try and stop it from happening as quick as possible. That's the bottom line. They didn't do that, which is also strange because if you just put up the second one I sent you there, Scotty, this is in March, so 8 weeks, 2 months ago. The Uvalde police, who were the ones on scene first within 4 minutes and would have been tasked with doing what that police training expert said, which is storming the building as soon as possible to deal with threat. They underwent training in this specific situation. Obviously, some general active shooter in the school or active shooter somewhere in Uvalde, and they went through that training.
That was at the high school, so that was the school that Ramos went to. They had the active shooter
right,
training.
but you would assume that it's
Oh,
the same,
yeah,
right?
no,
The point is, it's not at the school. I'm not saying at the school, but they went through the training for an active shooter in a school, and part of the training is as soon as you arrive, you go and try and do something about it.
Yeah.
And they didn't. So why? Who knows? There's no explanation for that. There's no answer for that. There's no reasonable answer for that. And that's why everybody's up in arms about it, or the people that aren't up in arms about it are up in arms about it, because there is no satisfactory answer as to what, and there hasn't been one.
Not least the
date.
parents who turned up. They got an alert and they started showing up. And there's video of them outside. Some of them had to be handcuffed. I read. I didn't see that myself. But they had to be restrained and pushed back. There seemed to be more police outside dealing with the parents.
Not only that, but there were police with long guns outside, and body armor.
Then there's the... I know. Did he plan this, or is it just opportunistic? Was it... By appearances, it's just like, it's a crazy guy and he went nuts. And there was a personal emotional reason for doing it, because he had a fight with his grandmother. Shoots at her, she survives, drives her truck. It wasn't his pickup. Drives her truck, even though he can't drive, but whatever, maybe he knows enough. But he crashes it. Why did he crash? Maybe just because he can't drive. He crashes it badly, though, and he walks out, and the school is right there. Now, maybe that's where he intended to go, okay? So he gets to the school, but he starts shooting from the outside and walks around to a back door that's open. This back door is normally closed. And what they've reported is that the door had been propped open minutes earlier by a teacher.
Yeah.
Maybe she does that regularly. Maybe she goes out for smokes. Maybe there's a perfectly mundane reason for it.
Similar
but
to
that's bloody opportunistic.
Similar to Sandy Hook, actually.
There was
someone opened the door of Sandy Hook Elementary School for Lanza. That's the official story.
Same with the theater in Aurora, Colorado.
Yeah. Throw up that video, Scotty, just on that point before we carry on. This is the video we're talking about of parents being... Just play a little bit of it there. Parents being stopped from going in.
It then would be
Stop
an
it there for a
hour
second.
before U.S. Border Patrol and
No, that
tactical
guy.
teams arrive
Just stop
and
for a second,
shoot and
Go back a little bit.
The
I think you
deadliest
got the
school
wrong
shooting
video
in
now.
state history. The 19 children who were killed include
no,
a fourth
that's the wrong
grader
video.
full of energy who, according to his father, was
You
ready
must
to
have skipped
play
the
until
video.
nighttime. A 10-year-old who loved
Ah.
it then
Stop
would
it.
be
One just obscured what I want to talk about. You can go back a second. Okay. So here, these are the cops outside. That guy's got an assault rifle, and he's not the only one. You can see others as the video plays. There's a guy in the background with an assault rifle, all with body armor and stuff. The guy in the building didn't have any body armor.
Initially, they reported he did.
I know, but he
in the
didn't.
new timeline,
Yeah.
he didn't. Yeah.
But you don't know. That's the thing.
Yeah.
The point is that when you've got a bunch of local police who have body armor and have long rifles and stuff, there's no reason for them not to be in that school.
Yeah.
When certainly after they've ascertained some details about the situation from the initial cops who went in and stuff. I mean, we don't know, but we assume that they knew there was just one guy in a classroom, and there's like maybe 10 of them outside. What, they can't go and storm the classroom and with their body armor and stuff and just go and, I mean, that's their job, right? They're meant to put themselves in danger as part of their job, right? They put their lives at risk as part of their jobs, and especially when it's about saving children, you think there'd be no better cause to put yourself in danger as a police officer, But that's the video we're talking about, where it just shows the parents being very upset and stuff, and one parent actually on the ground being handcuffed and stuff. Anyway, but yeah, I just want to make that point about the fact that there were plenty of cops around, suitably
At
equipped.
the very least, what it shows is that the parents have the normal response when the threat of harm to children is involved. Even if it's not their own child specifically, that they can go in and actually help. The police and any other law enforcement responders who are not, for whatever reason, they're probably they're following orders, they're following protocols, or they're confused about protocols. They're confused about what exactly they're ordered, whatever the reasons are. The result, the upshot of it is they're mucking it up, When they do make a decision,
Well,
they burst in, they shoot them 27 times. Okay, why a 75-minute wait to do that?
yeah.
It reminds me of Las Vegas shooting. They had no problem going in and just shooting him right in the head. Done.
Right.
When they did it,
Yeah.
an hour later.
Why the delay? Yeah. Well, the delay is because they are because there's a chain of command and they're getting orders, basically. Someone's giving orders.
Yeah.
So you have to go up the chain of command in this situation to find out who was giving the orders, who was making the decisions to go or not to go, to stop, to wait, etc., etc. And the only explanation they've given so far, and this is from the police department, I suppose, the chief of police in Uvalde, was that they made the wrong decision to wait. And it's like, duh, you know what I mean? I mean, it's like the fact that he would even say that, it's like, so some guy goes into a school and you hear, with an assault rifle and starts shooting, you hear gunshots. When would it ever be the situation that you should wait? There's no one in there to protect the children. There's someone in there with a gun and possibly a lot of ammunition. There's hundreds of kids in the building. When would wait be the appropriate response? Anyway. So yeah, it's suspicious, and I think what you're seeing in terms of what we've seen over the past number of days in terms of the media, especially even CNN and stuff, throwing shade at the whole situation and the explanation and questioning it is as far as you're going to go and as far as you're going to get. But it's quite a lot in terms of the questioning that you're seeing in the mainstream media, because it's it's unusual. traditionally they don't question. They're not going as far as saying there's a cover up here, there's something, but they're hinting in that direction, you know. And it's the egregious nature of what actually happened, and the bullshit answers that they're being given that is provoking that questioning, even in typically you know, pro-government, pro-authority outlets like CNN, you know.
Yeah. The governor of Texas, Abbott, said he's livid because he gave a press conference, which is kind of a bit notorious now because Beto O'Rourke, the Democrat, got up and made a political speech, stump speech, interrupting their press conference. Anyway, that's not what he's livid about. He's livid because he gave a press conference based on one set of facts he was given that have since changed. So the governor of the state of Texas was misled as well. Again, it could be for mundane reasons, but Jesus, I mean, it
stinks.
It's the thing I hate about it's. There's always like, who the hell gets to talk to the media and, you know, give authority? Anonymous law enforcement officials say, comma, though they're not allowed to speak, comma, and then they give the whole set of facts. It's not just like spurious facts that then a reporter has to cleverly stitch together. They're given the entire bloody package on day one. It goes around the world. Everyone remembers that version of it. And then over the next 72 hours, they take out this plank, this one, until you're left with this nebulous cloud that just begs more questions.
Right.
It renders the initial probable sounding motive totally meaningless, or at least close to it. You're still left with a crazed looper. There'll always be that.
Right.
You had Adam Lanza and Sandy Hook. Here you have this Ramos kid. In Las Vegas, you had the casino addict who may have been a part-time gun salesman or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
But so
the whole narrative, I mean, for me, it's there's a question mark of the whole thing, and it kind of, you know, it does stink a little bit in terms of just in our own research over the last, 15, 20 years into these kind of shootings and the discrepancies and how the official story doesn't fit and the eyewitness narratives and stuff. It, you know, I'm fairly convinced that there's big question marks over some of the major mass shooting events where it was just a lone gunman. That was the narrative, that it was a lone gunman. I have question marks over validity of that narrative, just based on the evidence. On this one, yeah, I mean, so I have to leave it open on this one because of the discrepancies as well. But again, it speaks, for me, ultimately, in all of them, it speaks to if there is something else going on, it's going to be the involvement of people in positions of power who, in some way or other, facilitated or manipulated the event to one extent or another, you know. But of course, that's never talked about as part of the problem, because we're talking about the solution to this problem, right? That's what everybody's talking about.
Yeah.
In the US,
is
it's
it guns? Is it drugs?
Take away the
is
guns,
it mental
all that
illness?
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Blah, blah. But you know, in some of the major ones, if it's not any of those things really, if there's none of those major shooting events would have happened, if there wasn't a hidden hand involved, then you're missing the point. You're not going to find this. You're not going to solve the problem by focusing on those other issues that you've come up with. And people are digging. Of course, they have to dig. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, they go, "What's wrong with our society? Why is this happening over and over again?"
Yeah.
Well, maybe there's another reason why it's happening over and over again, but of course, that gets a bit murky.
To broaden it out a little in the context of other recent atrocities, not least the one that took place in Buffalo. It's kind of an interesting geographical comparison. This one took place about 100 kilometers as the crow flies from the Mexico border. Last week's atrocity, Buffalo, is right on the border with Canada. Don't know if that's in any way saying anything, but maybe it's just interesting symbolically. There's a paper trail linking, as there usually is, a virtual paper trail this day and age. Ramos is 18, he's on social media. He has social media posts on Instagram. He drops a post on someone he doesn't know. He follows on Instagram, who's kind of like got a bit of a following, 16,000 followers. She, do you like my guns? And she's like, who the fuck are you? You know, unsolicited stuff like that. But there's also like there's a chat with a girl he's friends with online who lives in Germany via Facebook, etc., etc. What I'm getting at here is this next report. Can you put up the one from Buffalo News? So this is about the shooting that took place Buffalo last week at the Tops supermarket. Authorities investigating if retired federal agent knew of Buffalo mass shooting plans in advance. Let's read the first few paragraphs. Okay, law enforcement officers are investigating whether a retired federal agent had about 30 minutes advance notice of a white supremacist plan to murder black people at his Buffalo supermarket. Authorities believe the former agent, believed to be from Texas, curious, was one of at least six individuals who regularly communicated with accused gunman Peyton Gendron in an online chat room where racist hatred was discussed. The two sources who told Buffalo News about this, with direct knowledge of the investigation, stated that these individuals were invited by Gendron to read about his mass shooting plans and the target location about 30 minutes before he went and carried it out. Now that suggests that, well, maybe there was a sliver of opportunity. That's one reading you can get from that. But what it also suggests is that in chat rooms online, where these people are becoming radicalized, if that's what it is,
Well, that gets into
there are
yeah.
government.
Yeah, of course there are.
Agents.
Of course there are. But that's well known that they're there, right? And that gets into the whole FBI terror plot thing, where
What-
federal agents and have informants, effectively people working for the federal agency who are tasked with digging up or digging out potential terrorists slash mass shooters slash white supremacists slash whatever you want. But the murky part of it is, as was revealed and has been revealed by us before now, or talked about by us before now, the problem is that you get into budget justification and mission justification, essentially, where the FBI, for example, or any other agency is given large amounts of money and employs all of their agents every year as part of their budget in order to root out what we know is the white supremacist slash terrorist slash whatever threat in this country. Now, if that's your job and you've been given a budget to do your job, and every year you don't turn up any evidence, you don't achieve any arrests or uncover any plots, then you're not going to get as big a budget the next year. You're going to say, well, we don't need you to do this, right? So
Got to meet targets.
yes, exactly. So when these people are involved in chat rooms or directly with certain people that they suspect might be terrorists or white supremacists planning mass shootings or something like that,
You can see there's a
You bring it
mundane
along, basically.
motivation for why
well,
they would be doing
yeah,
that.
you bring it along and you effectively groom the individual in a sense to get it out, spit it out. What do you want to do? Do you want to wage a full ground war in America? Do you want to shoot up this school?
The
When are
Miami
you going to
7.
do it? Yeah, exactly. The Miami 7, yeah. The Seas of David. I think they were ninjas. Anyway,
They were ninja, Jewish, Muslim, something.
yeah,
Some sect.
yeah, Rastafarians or something. Anyway, and all of them had a collective IQ of like 20. Anyway, but they were going to wage a ground war against the US.
And this is all suggested to them, and they just went,
by the FBI.
by the FBI.
People like, do you like money?
That-
Yeah, we
well,
like
that-
money. Here's
That's
some
what I'm
money.
hinting at here. That people have analysed this well enough. Obviously, your good self kind of led the way, but others have done it since when it comes to terror issues. When there's kind of a more in-your-face political or international dimension to these atrocities. I don't think people really consider it, though. If it works for a bombing, say Boston bombings, a real one, or a foiled plot, Sears Towers,
Yeah.
2006, why would this not also be in play, in consideration?
Well, of course, yeah.
If only for ongoing monitoring.
And
to get them out of the woodwork and to identify them
of
and to
course,
stop them pre-crime.
stop them happening. But then, as we see in the FBI terror plots, the FBI brought them to almost to fruition. Let's say, you know what I mean. On some occasions, they give the supposed perps a fake bomb, that kind of thing, and took them right to the place where they were going to plant the bomb, and only then arrested them. Now, there's a very thin line there between arresting them at that point, giving them a fake bomb and arresting them and saying, see, we uncovered a terror plot and we got an arrest, or if someone decides, you know what, maybe we need an actual terror attack. The only difference there is real bomb, don't arrest them. Then you also get your arrest, although it's not as satisfactory because you didn't foil the plot. But strangely enough, that's better than
Has that ever happened?
That's better than having no plots at all, because it's better from a budget point of view. For one example, it's better from a budget point of view to have a terror plot actually
Be foiled.
be carried out than to have none at all.
Okay.
Because the fact that one happens and people are killed in a bombing in the US or something is evidence that this threat is real and we need to increase our budget.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah. I remember after.
The worst thing is when you have none.
I remember after a terror attack in what was one time a home city, Brussels, for me. My parents, I called to check they were okay. They were nowhere near it, but my first words out of my mum's mouth were, the intelligence services really need to up their game.
Yeah, for sure, yeah. Of course.
When did you become an expert?
Yeah.
Is that your first reaction? Well, obviously that was planted.
Right.
And she picked it up.
Yeah. Of course.
and-
And you asked if any had ever happened in that way, where it was a stage managed, FBI grooming kind of scenario of would be terrorists that went ahead and carried out the bombing. The problem is you'd never be told that was the case. You know what I mean? As soon as if something like that happens and people are killed in a bombing or shooting or something, the FBI is not going to tell you that they were directly involved with these people all the way along, right up until the point of the shooting. Of course, the most you get out of that, and this is something that people have heard probably quite a lot, is that the individual was known to intelligence agencies. How many times have you heard that when it comes to terror attacks over the past 15 or 20 years? He was known to intelligence agencies. That's evidence that they were following the person, that they were directly involved with the person, they were talking to him, and that there were someone within the intelligence agencies was grooming the person.
Do you know of any incidents in
It's
terror
possible,
or
I
mass shootings where it came out in subsequent investigation, maybe in a court, that they'd taken it to that point where they hadn't just groomed and given them a bomb and then foiled it, but it had gone on to happen?
That's what I'm saying. You would never hear.
You would never hear.
They would never tell
What about
you.
the 1993?
World Trade Center?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's probably
Didn't
the
that
best
come
one.
out eventually?
Yeah. There was a guy, O'Neill, who was overseeing that, who eventually was...
Or it would have come out, but he died in
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
2001.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's one other piece of sort of relate. The upshot of this is it's kind of predictable in the US. In the past, in general, the reaction on anyone sort of on the right in the United States is when they're uber skeptical and they're trying to point the finger, they say, oh, okay, we see what's going on here. Whatever about who did it, the political angle on this is gun control. You want to take away our guns, right? And we've always downplayed that because we're like, look, the fact of the matter is every time something like this happens, gun sales increase in the United States and nothing ever gets done.
Right.
Nevertheless, right, politically, they do speak as one, authorities, local and state. Biden said after this, look, for God's sake, something needs to be done. Fundamentally, we need to change something. Obviously, what he's getting at here is some kind of gun control law. Kamala Harris, yesterday, calls for assault weapons ban. This probably won't go anywhere. This is the United States of America, right? But that has been... It could yet happen, I think, in the US. They could actually try to, at least legally, have some kind of assault weapons ban. Maybe there would be some states that just would refuse and they would opt out. but I think they might go like full COVID measure on, maybe not from this right now per se, but this is where it's going to. They are, so in a sense, the right are correct-ish. They are trying to come for our guns, so to speak. Anyway, whether or not it gets off the ground or not, the assault weapons ban specifically on like AR-15s, like the guns that the kids supposed to use. That's what happened in Canada. In April 2020, there was a federal mandated assault weapons ban and an amnesty or whatnot. People were to turn them in. I don't know how successful it was. It sounds like they were happy with it. A lot of people, if most people, turned in assault weapons in Canada. And it came straight after an unbelievable smash shooting / God knows what to call it. I called it a multi-site terror attack because it happened at 13 freaking locations. No, 6 locations over 13 hours. It went on like all night and the next day. I won't, go back into that now, but I want to give you just an idea of this is what happens when a major incident actually goes nowhere because it's so confusing. There still is no timeline. There still is no established timeline in what happened in Nova Scotia in April 2020. Left in the dark. This headline, this is from February this year. The Premier of Nova Scotia province in Canada frustrated with mass shooting inquiry. So that prompted hang on a sec. Let's look at this next one. It's the investigation has gone so bad there that they have started also in February this year. It's ongoing now. It closes up in about 5 months' time when they must issue a final report. An independent inquiry.
That's the same link.
Oh,
you
is
sent
it?
me. Yeah.
Blast. I don't have it. Anyway, there's a separate independent inquiry into the investigation. Because it's the same death toll, I think 22, but more injured. It's extremely complex. It took place over so many different places. Some of the killings were targeted, and that's admitted. That they couldn't, they couldn't claim otherwise because there were specific police officers that were killed. Their cars were torched afterwards. There was one policewoman who thought she was going to meet a colleague to discuss and do a car switch or somewhere in the middle of Nova Scotia in the countryside. And actually she's confronted by supposedly the lone gunman who shoots her, then burns the evidence in a fire. He's eventually, and part of the reason he managed to get away with what he did was that he was impersonating a police officer. He was going around in an RCMP car with the uniform, and that's how he fooled them. Okay, maybe. It later emerged, like not long after the events, that the guy was a paid informant, and he was paid like a lot of money by the Canadian government as an informant.
Yeah, that one is a very good example of what the kind of thing I'm talking about, where it's the whole thing is infiltrated. It's a good term. Infiltrated by the authorities. Basically, the whole operation has been infiltrated by the authorities. And again, like you said, that one has never been. There's still no answers as to what actually happened, how it happened, because it's just way too. You can't put the lone gunman narrative on that shooting in Halifax, right? Originally in Halifax.
It ended up in Halifax because the person, this guy was shot dead as he tried to approach Halifax airport, presumably to flee. Somehow he's going to fly out.
People should look into it because it's just crazy. Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
I have it here. I won't bother sending it to Scott, but anyway, this is May 15th. So globalnews.ca. Lawyers frustrated with mass shooting inquiry in Nova Scotia as deadlines loom. So this is the independent inquiry. The clock's being run down on the independent inquiry of the investigation. I mean...
Yeah, major cover-up.
They were promised Mounties would testify, and not a single one has so far. There's Omerta God knows they're probably scared, like
More like
whatever they've
more like
seen or
scared,
whatever
yeah.
they know. That
Yeah, and obviously, with that narrative where it's there seems to be, the most reasonable explanation would be that this wasn't a lone gunman, that there was help, and that it moves up the kind of the hierarchy of authority. The question then is, what is the goal? What's the point of doing that? Of course, we talked about budgets, justifying budgets and renewing budgets and stuff. Like your mom said, your mom figured that one out. But there's also obviously the social impact in terms of authorities wanting to keep a population distracted and to periodically terrorized, periodically scared, and certain sections of the authorities. Let's say, I mean, it gets very murky, and there you get into full blown conspiracy theories and stuff, but obviously that's the end result, because that's the goal. It has to be assumed if you go there. It has to be assumed that's the goal, because that is the result. Social control, basically, control of the population. Of course, and all the narratives that they come up with, it's just fine. People can argue about banning guns or keeping guns
or giving more guns. Make sure the teachers are armed.
get everybody guns, and then you have, interestingly, just a few days later in Virginia, if you throw that one up, Scotty. This doesn't. It's kind of poked a hole in the narrative of let's remove all the guns, because there was in Virginia a few days later, just two days ago, I think, Charleston in West Virginia, sorry, a 37-year-old man with a extensive criminal history targeted a group of about 40 people who were attending a birthday party with a semi-automatic rifle, and one of the party attendees had a gun and shot him dead. So that's an argument right there for why in that scenario where you have
Armed civilians, they can respond quickly, immediately.
we have shootings, yeah, or it's a country where there are regular shootings, and there are people who, for whatever reason, influenced or encouraged or helped or whatever, are going to certain places and attempting to shoot a lot of people. It makes sense that the people who the would-be targets, at least some of them, have weapons, because otherwise they're ducks, a fish in a barrel, right?
Yeah.
So it's not going to be solved through that debate, and it's fine. That's why they're happy to let that debate rage on. And Biden, what are we going to do? And Kamala Harris, we need to do this and that. They don't care. They're not going to do anything.
No. Somebody was pointing out that it's interesting that in the space of the last 2 weeks, 2 issues have flared up because of the two mass shootings, one on each border. The other one is Roe versus Wade. And they flare up in such a way that the most extreme expressions of each are expressed. Obviously the Supreme Court ruling, is it made or was still only in the leaked phase? I can't remember what, but that they would overturn Roe versus Wade. It prompts the most extreme expression of that debate. So pro-life, anti-life, total abortions versus zero.
Right.
There can be no middle ground. There can be no reasons. There can be no extenuating circumstances. No. You're either with us or you're against us, depending on how you're blue or you're red.
Right.
Same with this one as well. The most atrocious thing imaginable happens. Extremely easily acquired assault weapons slaughter 19 6-7-year-olds. Like it kind of gives one side in an extreme, in a polarized environment, the upper hand, so to speak.
Right.
Whether that's by design or not is besides the point. That's what happens. The Democrats get to go, obviously.
Yeah.
Look what just happened. It's obvious that we need to do something about this. And they're right. It is obvious that something needs to be done about this.
So what's the cause? What's the real cause? Yeah. It's complicated, as they say. So, Parkland, I was going to ask you about Parkland. The Parkland shooting.
Yeah. Very similar. Deranged guy admitted it, more or less. Oh, yeah, he did. He owned it. He wanted it to be his work, But he lived, though. It's bigger area, though. It was different. at least in this elementary school in Texas, it was a small building, limited to two classrooms, kind of, with a joining door. In Parkland, the timeline was so crazily changed that he went up one stairwell, along the whole length of the building, to a second floor, what we call a second floor. Is that a first floor in America?
Whatever.
Ground up one, all the way back along, up again, all the way back along, down and out. They had to change that completely. They had to go, it's too much. It was too much in the time that could have been. So instead he went in one, in one, along and up once, and then back out. Because there were media reports with eyewitnesses. It's interesting how that doesn't seem to happen anymore. You never seem to see media reports because they used to stick the cameras in front of anyone they could find. One was with the blonde girl at the time, who was a kind of a bit ditzy, and her statement could be read a couple of ways. She said, "Yeah, well, there was definitely another one, totally." Well, why? Because she was sure she could hear proximate firing and distant. That could be confused.
Yep, for sure.
But there was a teacher who described someone who looked very different on the third floor. That's the uppermost floor, which has been removed in the final timeline. He could only have gotten to the second floor in
Right.
the official timeline. But she's on the third floor, and she's describing a guy like head to toe, hardcore body armor, like RoboCop stuff. Whereas the puny little kid officially only had like his cap on, a baseball hat, maybe one piece of something across which he took off, dropped the gun, and walked out in his, wine-colored shirt.
Yeah, it was the same in Sandy Hook, where while Lanza was in the building, a teacher said that they saw through kind of like frosted glass on one of the windows in a classroom. They saw a black-clad figure walking along outside the school. There's lots more about Sandy Hook, but anyway, yeah. So I don't know. We don't have any solutions. We don't have except that what maps to reality, and it depends what reality you live in, I suppose, and it depends how you see the world, and how you view the world, and how you view authorities in the world, and how you view what's really going on, and whether you believe authorities when they say what they say, or whether you think that they don't really care, and that there's certain sections of government, especially in intel agencies, who as far as we're concerned, are pretty evil people and have a particular agenda. And once you go there, then there's a lot of things that the view of how the world works and why certain things happen changes radically, and it's not the media version. Yeah,
I think-
very very often it maps to reality is the thing. Very often that kind of a version, a view of how the world works, maps to the reality of these kind of shootings, depending on the shooting or depending on the terror attack or something. Positing that kind of a scenario where you have quite evil people in positions of power who would stoop to doing certain things like this. It fits. It fills in the holes and the discrepancies like that we're talking about around the shootings and stuff. What are you going to say, Scotty?
I was just going to say, I think it's, people were pointing out in the chat, and they were saying, well, but the midterm elections are coming, and of course, you finally, after these 2+ years of COVID, life gets back to normal and semi-normal.
Yeah, back to normal. with
Fauci
mass
isn't on
shootings.
TV every day, and then it becomes, the Russia and Ukraine thing, and so everybody's hanging the Ukrainian flag, and they go, oh my God, World War III, and then it's fuel prices, and everyone's calling it, Biden's on TV calling it Putin's price hike, and meanwhile, Biden's popularity is like completely in the toilet. It's like a new world record. And midterm elections are coming, so you got that, and then you we got some shootings. Isn't that great?
Back to normal, right?
Yeah, but it's like it's really just it's like one thing after another to just utterly
Keep people
like
distracted.
shatter
and-
people's brains and just turn them into. Everyone's just so traumatized that then the next thing, and then it's monkeypox. Oh, monkeypox is going to kill you all. No, it's not. The WHO says, no, monkeypox is not dangerous. I read one article, it was 2 days ago, that said, no, you don't have to worry. Monkeypox isn't going to spread. And then I think it was last night or this morning, I read another article saying, they said there won't be mass vaccination. But then the WHO again came out and said, yeah, but there could be a super spreader event, and here's how. I'm like, but you just said we don't. It's like a constant barrage of anything that will melt your brain, and the more emotional and crazy it is.
Yeah.
So when the next thing comes down the pipe, whatever, everybody is just, their brains are just mush, and it's like,
Yeah. Yeah. It's the very fact that it's so nebulous, the timeline's fluid, it's changing. It speaks to how hard it is to ever say with any kind of certainty that something is done for a political reason.
yeah.
Because
There's always
that posits that at least there's a coherent method behind the madness. It just appears to us as madness.
Yeah.
Even the
Exactly.
even the sensible ones who are brave enough to be giving the press conferences, dealing with those extremely pissed parents, traumatized parents. Do you remember after Vegas that sheriff? I forget his surname. You could see it on his face, the contortions he was trying to go through to explain to people in some kind of coherent way what had taken place. And the guys leaning over his shoulder with the pressure they were putting on him. On there.
FBI dude, yeah.
Similar here, I noticed that this Steve McGraw guy had two
Chef Lombardo.
very
Sheriff Lombardo.
McGraw in a press conference this week had two pretty serious looking dudes
With the
in
hats
the
on them?
white hats,
Yeah. Echoes of
staring at him,
JFK.
beady eyes right behind, you know. I kind of,
Dallas Police Department,
yeah.
Yeah, play that, Scotty. I think that's the best answer. Overall, broad, macro explanation.
Mr. Dascom. Why they need us?
In the former United States.
So that's just, for me, that's, it's obviously from a comic book and then from a movie, V for Vendetta. But in explaining what Scotty was just saying there about one thing after the next one, just to kind of shatter people's brains. I mean, it's like something
Why?
that
To
explains
to prevent focus.
something that explains why that would be happening. If you assume that it's not just a series of coincidences or accidents, basically that come along. And they're just getting worse. It's like COVID, Ukraine, monkeypox, mass shootings. They're all it's all kind of spiraling in a certain sense. I mean, it's happened before, but the way it's been going over the past, really since 9/11, since the past 15 or 20 years, the world has changed a lot, and the world is a lot more unsafe. I think most people would say that they've felt that, definitely. And the answer, if you assume that that's not just the way the world's going, it's all coincidental. If you assume that there is some directing hand in it, then the directing hand is directing it for that reason that Chancellor Sutler in that video just said. It's power and control by certain people in positions of power over, or of authority over the people. That's what drives them.
Mm-hmm.
And these things serve that agenda very well. So it's whether or not there's an agenda. You have to decide whether or not you think there's an agenda within high level political circles to keep the population afraid and controlled. And it's a call you can make. You can make it one way or another. You can decide that it's all just things are just going pretty shit, and things they're on the downward trending, basically, in terms of society and economically and all that kind of stuff. And that's just the way things go. It just happens that way. Or if there is some kind of an agenda to push it in that direction in order to, again, control the population. And it's not a strange, strange idea. It's not an outlandish idea. Even though it's presented that way, it's immediately discredited by the term conspiracy theory. But it's not an outlandish idea, and especially when it provides a coherent explanation of why, to fill in the minutiae, in the details of how there's discrepancies in officials' accounts of how these trauma-inducing events happen and stuff. I mean, if they can't get their story straight, that suggests that there may be some deception, and if there's some deception, it points to that it being orchestrated in some way, or being planned in some way.
Yeah.
And it's something you can explore. You don't have to dive in and jump in the deep end and swallow it whole or whatever, but you can think about it and consider it and see if it makes sense to you, because it makes sense to some people and won't make sense to others, you know.
Well, I still think the Las Vegas one was related to Russia intervening in Syria. I know that's like, what the hell? But sometimes the national, what's going on domestically in the United States and what's happening internationally are connected.
To distract people.
To make sure that over the next month, because it lasted a month, the news cycle in the United States was not describing Putin's intervention in Syria crushing ISIS. Instead, it was, random terror attack. No, random, I didn't use the term terror attack. That's what it was, though. They said random mass shooting. The worst ever, indeed. It was 50-some people killed.
Yeah, although Russia went to Syria in 2015, officially. You're thinking of the...
I'm thinking of something else.
You're thinking of the Caliber cruise missile launcher or something?
Yeah,
right?
Las Vegas was 1st of October 2017.
Yeah.
I don't know why I connected that. Anyway, at the time, the mind does wander. You're like, okay, what are they trying to distract us from? But sometimes, like Scotty said, there need not be a clear...
Well, it was evolving. Like, Russia was in Syria from 2015, but then it really built up. And by the end of December, in December 2017, the Russians said that they're in Syria permanently. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was around the end of 2017 that Russia was kind of had to finish. You have to look at the actual events, but there may have been something that connected the two. You know what I mean? In the sense that bigger events in terms of Russia kind of really winning the war, America's proxy war in Syria, you know, around that time. You have to look at the specifics, you know. Anyway, speaking of the great and the good, they were all at the all in Davos this week. Still are, were they? Went on Sunday or Monday or something. And World Trade Organization, right? World, is it WTO?
World Economic Forum.
Well, WEF. There's so many.
Not to be confused with the WWF.
No, although there are some similarities. Yeah, they've all been having a good chat. They're talking about what they're going to do to, well, control the world, basically. Did I send you this one? No, I'll send you this one. I have a couple from Australia, but they've all been, most of them have been reading from the same kind of song sheet. This is Helen E. Clark. She's an Australian government, kind of like online security, online safety commissioner or some stuff like that. Helen E. Clark. She's not Helen. Sorry, Helen E. Clark. She's also Australian. She is. Let me just look her up here. Get the exact. She's a New Zealand politician. And she was 37th Prime Minister of New Zealand until 2008, and now she's just a talking head, basically. But anyway, you can play that. This is her at Davos. It's kind of funny. With a rabbit.
The reality is that political resolve to fight COVID is waning. Popular support for measures is waning. You know, people are over COVID. The problem is it's not done with us, but we're in danger of losing this moment for transformative change. And let's face it, people are still dying in significant numbers every day. People are still developing long COVID every day.
Really?
Low-income countries are horribly under-vaccinated. We've got issues here and now.
And no COVID.
Another reason is
Africa.
that the package of things that has to happen is trans-sector, and there hasn't yet been an effort to try and bring together a head of state and government level focus on the range of things that needs to be done. We said this needs a special session at the General Assembly. It needs a negotiated political declaration that brings the different threads together. We're talking not just the WHO and health ecosystem. We're talking the WTOs. We're talking the IFIs. We're talking the wide range of foundations, players in the space. And so a lot of people are doing bits and pieces, but it's not looking like a coordinated push to get transformational change.
We want transformational change. That's what we want. And then just throw up. Did I
If
say
only
anyone?
we had a global dictator.
Exactly. You know, he's listening to these
Bill
people.
Gates was sitting there at that panel.
I know, yeah.
He would have put his hand up.
I think he was at that panel. Or there's a guy beside him, Kagan. What's his name?
Donald Kagan, the husband of
Yeah,
Newland.
he was better. And then did I send you one there, Scotty, as well?
Yeah.
Okay, this is Julie Grant. She's an Australian online safety czar or something like that. Listen to what she has to say.
We are finding ourselves in a place where we have increasing polarization everywhere, and everything feels binary
Glad
when
you
it
noticed.
doesn't need to be. So I think we're going to have to think about a recalibration of a whole range of human rights that are playing out online. You know, from freedom of speech to the freedom to, to be free from online violence, or the right of data protection to the right to child dignity.
Going to have to revisit and relook at freedom of speech and whether it's possible to have freedom of speech in order to avoid online harm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Here's looking at you, Joe,
Yeah. What do you mean?
talking truths online,
Yeah, scaring people.
facts and stuff.
Look, it's if you're afraid of online harm, there's a simple solution: unplug your computer. You know, go back and live a normal life.
But
You can still, well, no, you don't unplug your computer. Just don't go to certain sites. You're not going to get on any online harm on Amazon. You can still shop on Amazon. You know what I mean? Nobody on Amazon is nobody else on Amazon when you're on Amazon. It's just you and all of Amazon alone. It's like being in a massive Amazon warehouse and just being able to browse everything and buy things if you want, if you've got any money. So there's all sorts of online activity that people can engage in where there's no harm involved. And if you realize that there's, that certain things are harmful to you, like reading the truth about something or reading something that conflicts with your opinion about something, if that's harm to you, then you shouldn't be on the internet or you shouldn't be on those websites. Don't go to Twitter. If you go to Twitter and you read something that triggers you because it's not what you believe, and you get annoyed, and then you start engaging with the person, and then they say nasty things to you, and then you feel that's harm, then simple solution, don't go back to Twitter.
Yeah.
You'd be far better off without it, So the idea, though, that we have to, these, like she just said, that, and there's lots of people like her. I mean, we talked last week about the US trying to set up a disinformation czar, who actually, the whole thing was mothballed. The whole plan for disinformation czar was mothballed because she fell victim, her in particular, whatever her name is, to disinformation, or the idea of the disinformation czar. There was so much talk about it on the internet, and it was so much disinformation that they had to cancel it.
Yeah.
So, but there's obviously a lot of people who want that on. Bill Gates is one of them who wants it. Bill Gates wants. He's been
Control.
He's been open about his attempts to take down Elon Musk. He really doesn't like Elon Musk. Well, he's not even a doctor. Like, I mean, you think his domain would be vaccines and stuff, right? And viruses, but he doesn't want any alternative narrative to anything. Alternative to his narrative on the internet.
Yeah. This is why.
So this is about control. The reason I'm bringing this up is it speaks to the controlling impulse of these people in positions of power, which speaks to what we were talking about before, in terms of anything that has a direct impact on society, that shapes people's thinking, or that kind of stresses people out or terrorizes people in some way or other. You can, it fits to with the fact, the evidence that these people in positions of power have this agenda to control, manipulate, censor, shut down how people think in a particular way.
Yeah.
So if that's their agenda, then look at any event that happens and decide for yourself, does that major event that gets all the news headlines, does that have an effect on how people think? Or does it shepherd people in a particular way towards them thinking in a certain way? Or does it divide people? Because that's part of control as well.
The interesting thing to me is we just listened to those two WWF ladies giving their whole spiel, and just, the one was saying, everything's so binary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, but it's people like you who are making it binary.
Right.
Like abortion, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Abortion comes up again, Roe v. Wade, all that kind of stuff. And I actually had to post on Facebook and say, I'm actually both.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they polarize people and then say, like, well, in some instances, yes, pro-choice makes sense. In some instances, pro-life makes sense. But who actually wants to actually... It's like you're not allowed to have
A middle ground.
a middle
nuanced.
ground. And, then they even have things like the whole Alex Jones and Sandy Hook thing, or was it Sandy Hook? The actors thing, where they come out and they say, it's like I think they will actually release that as like a conspiracy theory that is a real conspiracy theory, so that anyone who says that, well, something's not right with COVID, suddenly you can just ignore them.
You're one of those Alex Jones people.
You're one of those Alex Jones people, and it all just. But the interesting thing is, I've had so many people come up to me and say, I used to think blah blah blah, and then I looked into this COVID thing, and suddenly I was like, Jesus, and somebody I know, the same thing happened to them on Facebook. It's this woman reporting that she met someone at a store, and this was a person who online they were like hating each other because one was pro-vaccine against COVID, the other was anti-vax, and they met in real life and they started talking, and the woman who was the woman who was pro-vax went through this whole spiel. She got COVID, blah 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 blah, and she totally changed her way of thinking, and from that point on, she started looking at other things in a different way. And it's like, it's interesting to me that you look into one thing and then you look into another thing, and you don't actually start seeing conspiracies everywhere. You start actually thinking and actually looking at things in a more nuanced way.
That's the point. That's the point. The point is that
which is
that
awesome,
nuanced thinking.
Because you're not all emotional and crazy.
Right.
Even though people think, oh, you're seeing conspiracies everywhere, it's actually the exact opposite.
Right.
Like your life, you're happier. You're calmer because you have some...
Yeah, it's the definition of actually thinking, is to realize that any given situation is nuanced and complex, and you need to actually engage your thinking in order to try and figure out or come to a reasonable approximation of what actually happened here, what the likely truth is. But if when you do that, it leads you in a certain direction, that it has long before now been set up as wrong think and conspiracy theory, and people are afraid to actually think in that direction, because they'll be smeared, they'll be tarnished with, oh, you're one of those Alex Jones, you probably think Sandy Hook was blah blah whatever. So it's a very effective way of stopping people from thinking, because it's wrong thinking, it's scary, and you'll be demonized or you'll be slandered for questioning the official narrative, basically.
Yeah, and for interfering. That's how these Davos people see it.
You're interfering in the narrative we're building.
You're interfering.
Yeah.
You're not helping.
And of course, the solution to things being very binary these days is to simply remove one of those two options in the binary setup. Only have one. Right?
That's what they would like. I mean, Elon Musk is coming in now, and he would prefer to open it all back up and have try and make a level playing field again. He's like, I want to see both opinions argued out in the light of day, and we'll see how things develop from there naturally, right? But he's either not understanding, or maybe he's not so naive. Maybe he does understand, but he's going to push this anyway, see how far he can get. These people are determined, and they will kill to get what they want. They believe they've already thought it through, and there's no need for any extra thinking about this. It's just time to have action.
We'll do your thinking for you.
Look, here's another little clip from Davos last week. This is the CEO of Nokia. Let's hear what he has to say about what's coming down the pipe.
It will, first of all, it will definitely happen. I was talking about 6G earlier, which is around 2030. I would say that by then, definitely the smartphone as we know it today will not anymore be the usual kind of the most common interface.
Wow.
Many of these things will be built directly into our bodies.
And one of
You first.
It's not just Klaus Schwab. These people are convinced that in the next 8 years, we will all be bionic. 8 years. They're also, we've heard it before, Angela Merkel and Macron, France and Germany, are determined there will be no diesel cars on the highways by 8 years' time. I mean, they're going where they don't brook any, there's no debate here as far as they're concerned.
Yeah.
And they're determined, and they're going to wreck as much as they don't realize. Well, no, they do realize, they don't care, whatever. They're going to hurt a lot of people to do what they believe is right. They don't care.
But there's an awful lot of people anyway, so it doesn't really matter if a few slip off the edge, you know, or even quite a lot. That's the other thing people don't understand, and it's elementary in trying to see, trying to get a better appreciation or better understanding of how the world actually works in terms of the power structure and the hierarchy and governments, etc., and the relationship to the people, is that people in positions of power, by definition, see themselves as being better than the average person in the street. Because otherwise, why did those people elect them? Why am I in this position where all these people elected me to a position in power where I get to make decisions for these people if by definition I'm not better than them? So there's a pull to kind of like an egotism and a self-centeredness and a grandiosity, you know, and people who seek that position almost have that already. They're few and far between the ones who are genuinely motivated to use their talents to help the ordinary person, right? But also, the way they look at people in the world, like any country, you know, France, US, imagine the US, like politicians in the US, 330 million people. Do you think they have a direct relationship? They feel that they have a direct relationship with each individual person. Those people are numbers to them. When they die in mass shootings or they die in whatever way, it doesn't matter. If they die from viruses, it doesn't matter to those people. They don't care about you. And this is something we said about that was relevant to COVID as well, is that doctors have the same approach, and they almost have to have it by necessity. You know, you can't have a personal relationship or develop a personal relationship or a personal feeling for your patients, because first of all, you don't know them. They're not your family. You've never met them before. And second, they very might likely die. So, you know, there has to be that distance, you know, and much was talked about a lot over the COVID thing, about how doctors, during the COVID period, where how doctors make decisions all the time, have done for years, who'll live and who'll die. We've got one ventilator, and there's an old guy and a young guy. Old guy, sorry, he's going to die. Because he's going to die anyway, so it doesn't matter. So there's that cavalier attitude towards the lives of ordinary people that is a reality and always has been a reality, and it's in medicine and it's in government as well, because it's the same relationship. But ordinary people don't seem to be able to understand that or grasp that. If they're talking to a doctor, they think the doctor's like their daddy. If they're talking to a politician, appeal to your politician. He'll help you. He loves you. He really wants to see your problem solved. You know, it's a very childish and naive way to look at the world and relationships between people, especially people you don't know and people who are in positions of power, who by definition of being in positions of power tend to be most interested in themselves. Yeah. So that's a kind of elementary thing that needs to shift in a lot of people to understand the world that they live in, for them to even to begin to start to figure out or understand why things are happening the way they're happening, or the things that are actually transpiring. Anyway, the main news this week, Neil, you'll be glad to know. Moving on to a different topic. The main, yeah. Did you want to do more?
Well, I have.
Do we want to do?
Yeah, the
more Davos.
Yeah, they produced a new video. You know, like that great one where by 2030 you'll own nothing and you'll be happy.
Yeah.
Do you have it? I think I sent it to you just mid-show. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, so moving on.
Moving on. The major news this week is that you'll never guess. It's about Russia, about Ukraine, specifically about
Putin is Hitler, Ukraine is paradise.
It's worse than Putin is Hitler.
No.
If Putin's Hitler, it's good news. Put it up there, Scotty. Putin is Hitler, that's really good news.
I saw that.
Oh my God.
Daily Express, Vladimir Putin, quote, could already be dead with body double taking his place.
Talk about wishful thinking. I mean, it's just like what you want to happen, you know, put it out there as a news article. In fact, this is supposedly, and I have no reason to disbelieve him, is that it comes from an MI6 source.
Right. Incredible.
British intelligence
Incredible.
really, really wants Putin to be dead. So they're going to come up with the idea that maybe he's using a body double. Because, you know, when I see Putin on TV and he looks like he's still alive, I wish he was dead because he's really messing with our plans. So maybe if I say that, I think that could be a body double. He could be dead already. I'd really like to believe he's dead already. So I'm going to say that he's dead already. I'm going to tell the media that he might be dead already. They'll put it out there and see if that actually makes it happen. That's the people running the country, by the way.
I don't think it's so much that they fool themselves, but that
They're trying to...
it's kind of weird. And they're trying to fool people. So in this case, there will be a British tabloid. They'd be fooling ordinary working class Brits.
A lot of them.
But is it fooling them? In some cases, depending on the person, it might actually be a service that's wanted. They might see it that it provides succor. It gives kind of an emotional support. It's a cope, as they say.
Yeah.
Well, if
Copium.
it's copium. You know, yeah. Karl Marx. You know,
Yep.
religion is the opiate of the masses.
Is the copium. Of the
That's if you see it from a leftist materialist point of view, but actually, copium is the opiate of the masses.
Well,
where you bullshit them with stuff that makes them feel good in the short term.
I think that
like
kind
that
of
guy
stuff...
who said to me when I said, you know, the ghost of Kiev isn't real. He replied to me on Twitter, it's not really important whether he's real or not. It's the story.
Well, of
that
course, but
matters.
he's speaking to the reality of, you know, the reality behind or the point behind the information war, and why the information war is so important and why it's waged so strenuously by governments, because it's seen as it's propaganda, right? And propaganda can potentially have a tangible, real world result. I mean, so you can make stuff up, you can lie, you can bullshit, you can say, you know, Putin's dying, Putin's sick, Putin's failing, Putin's going to be kicked out by his generals.
All his generals are dead.
All his generals are dead. All of the Russian tanks are blown up. All the Russian army have got frostbite and have gone home. They're all baking in their tents like ovens in the summertime. Whatever. You can say all that because the point of saying all that is to provide, in a way, provide succor, but more specifically I think it's more about propaganda in the sense of for the Ukrainian people and for the Ukrainian military, and also for support from the West, right? So that we're winning, basically, because no one wants to be involved in a game if it's clear you're losing and you're going to lose bigly pretty soon. Okay, I'm leaving this game. I don't want to be on this team anymore. Can I leave now? So I'm walking away, you know. But no, stay on the team because we're winning. Yeah, we're really winning. And so anything that fits into that narrative of we're winning, i.e. Putin's dying, Putin doesn't exist, Putin, you know, is using a body double, that all serves that purpose of geeing up the home side.
Yeah.
But leading them down the primrose path to disaster, to a horrible realization that it was all a lie, it was all bullshit, or, you know, encouraging them to continue towards a dead end, basically, in a failing or failed game. It's not very nice, but you do it. You know, it's fair. You know, all's fair in love and war, and information and lies, and it's as old as war, really. You know what I mean? It's not something new. You know. But anyway,
in the meantime, in the real world,
Ukraine. The whole situation in Ukraine is, I mean, you just have to wade through so much bullshit. They don't care. The summation is that this is, yes, obviously an American proxy war waged by the Americans using the Ukrainian military to do so against Russia. First and foremost, war is an end in itself. Defense contractors, i.e. arms manufacturers, weapons manufacturers, are very, very happy. They're very friendly with politicians who are signing off on this war effectively against Russia. So it's an end in itself. They're making a lot of money out of using up stocks of old, very often old, or even new equipment that they're sending to Ukraine to fight Russia. So they don't need to win. It's a win already. Once you've started the war, it's a win. As long as you can manage it, and it doesn't look like you failed horribly, as long as you can avoid the optics like they got in last year in Afghanistan, then it's a win. You know what I mean? Just having the war. so that's a problem in a certain sense. You can't say America lost, although they have their initial agenda of making lots of money. Then they have add-on agendas, which is, look, we really like to see Russia go down, taken down a peg or two here. Really like to see them become a cropper type thing. But that's not happening, and it's unlikely to happen because the Russians are wise to it, and the Russians aren't that stupid. And there's nothing the Americans can do, and their European allies can do in Ukraine to really avert the course of the Russian special military operation in Ukraine, which is proceeding as it more or less was planned from the get-go. They're pretty much the first, what has been 3 months, the first 2.5 months or so was Mariupol, because that was a very strategic. It's 500,000 people, very difficult, big city. The Ukrainians were really well entrenched in that city. It took quite a long time to deal with it, but once it was done, and the Azovstal plant was kind of cleared, that freed up a lot of troops to go to engage in the second stage of it, which was, carrying on while Mariupol was being taken, but it's really gone full steam now in terms of controlling Donbass, basically.
2 major cities fell yesterday.
Kicking the Ukrainians out of major cities in the Donbass region and establishing Russian control over the full Donbass, i.e. the Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts or republics on their official borders.
Yeah.
And then from there, probably further south, west of Mariupol along the Black Sea coast over to Odessa, who knows, up to Dnipro, crossing the Dnipro River. And you notice that the Dnipro River, which runs kind of sort of centrally down through Ukraine, there are bridges there, railway bridges, that carry, obviously, railway cars and weapons. And the Russians, while they've been blowing up a lot of, taking out a lot of railway stations and railway transport hubs, basically, by blowing up, because a lot of Ukraine's trains, about 80% of their trains are electric. So they blow up the substations, which basically power the electric trains. And they've done that in many different areas, particularly in the west of Ukraine, in order to stop the transport of American and European weapons. But they haven't destroyed any of the bridges crossing the Dnipro River, which carry trains, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they want to use them.
Later.
I.e. they want to cross them. That's an assumption, but...
Maybe.
And
I
wondered why they didn't.
To facilitate retreat of
Possibly.
Ukrainian
Well,
fighters and civilians.
Maybe. Civilians, yes, possibly, yeah. They're not too concerned about treating Ukrainians. They're more than happy for them to surrender, which they've been doing en masse. So once Mariupol happened, and it was almost like there was a propaganda coup there and taken in the defeat of the heroes of Azovstal, because in the past week they've been going. The Russians have really been making a lot of progress and the Ukrainians have been retreating. And the thing is, they've been the ones that can retreat have been retreating. A lot of them are being captured or killed, but the Ukrainians established along those lines that the Russians are now pushing them back from. And you're talking about bunkers and trenches and all that kind of stuff, extensive, that were built up over the past 8 years for the express purpose of invading Donbass. They're basically leaving those now and retreating. And it took them 8 years to build up those lines, those defensive lines, or those offensive lines. And they're retreating now out of those, and they can't just re-establish them. There's some talk of them trying to re-establish new lines further back west, but you can't do that in a week or two, especially with the speed of the Russian advance, So, and we also noticed this week, since the Azovstal thing came to a close and Mariupol was, fully kind of taken, there was a real change in the media. They stopped talking so much, apart from the Sun, which talks about Putin using a body double. The Western media stopped with their Russia's failing, Russia's Russia's being defeated and stuff, and they're talking now about Russia needing to talk seriously with the Ukrainians to solve this crisis. And when that happens, that it means that's a tacit admission that Russia's winning significantly, So yeah, but it's hard. You got to weed through all the bullshit. Well, you have to understand that first and foremost, most of the Western media reporting on this Ukraine conflict so far has been lies. Almost all of it has been either lies or distortion of what is actually happening. So yeah, but they don't care. They never cared about Ukraine, and you know, I'd say over the next few weeks, you may even have wobbling of political positions of the political structure in Kiev, because once you really start being defeated, it's like militarily, who gets the blame? You know, there's all sorts of recriminations and changes of the guard, and we need to do something about this, and you're no good, you oversaw this, and look, and we're being defeated, we're being routed, we need to bring somebody else in. The military not being happy with Zelensky, you know, it'll all, you know, it can all go pretty pear-shaped pretty quickly. And of course, what else? What the US is going to send in longer range artillery or something, not going to make any difference. The artillery they've been sending, their Javelin missiles. You know, so they sent thousands of Javelin missiles in Ukraine, something like 20,000, or maybe that was total anti-tank missiles. But anyway, they sent thousands and thousands of Javelin missiles, and it's very hard to find any videos. And there's a lot of videos. There's hard to find any videos of a Javelin missile being used to take out a tank or shoot down an aircraft or whatever. Initially, there was a few videos, but since then, nothing. So like they talk it all up. And why do they talk up the Javelin missiles? And why are some people in Ukraine ending up calling their children, their newborn children, Javelin and Javelina? You know, and why does Zelensky wear a T-shirt with some propaganda about javelins on it? You know what I mean? Well, who does that benefit? Who's trying to make money off this? You know what I mean? Who's not just in Ukraine, but who's using the sale of their weapons with names like that in Ukraine as a marketing tool for the rest of the world? You know, American defense contractors. So it gets back to the whole war is a racket type thing. But so it's a joke, and the whole thing is just a sad, sorry joke. And obviously it's a tragic joke because it's not even a joke at that point. It's tragic in the sense that America and their European allies facilitating an increase in the suffering and death of the Ukrainian people, you know. I'm sure they knew at the very beginning that this was going to go the way that it was going to go, but the lure of money and, you know, being a strong man or a strong woman in a crisis and all that kind of stuff, you know, there was no downside to it for them, you know. They could exploit it and throw shade at Russia, sell a bunch of weapons, and give themselves a reason to be in their jobs, basically.
Yeah, and make sure to use it. Never let a good crisis go to waste, etc., etc. Here it was very well done at the level of maintaining the impetus of, on the one hand, greening the economy, on the other, the kind of continued rollout of centralized information / medical systems,
right,
resulting from lockdown and COVID. The continued centralization of all kinds of decision making, everything. It's control. It's not just about the COVID. COVID didn't end with the rollout of vaccines. You know,
right?
It was the means through which the increase of the use of familiarity at this point with QR codes that everyone has, with an integrated system, you know, a digital network that would ever centralize, like we saw this Nokia guy say, you know, by 2030 you're going to have implants in your body. You won't need a phone. It'll be
dude,
awesome.
Go ahead. You go first. Show us what it's like. You know what I mean? I want him to stick whatever implants and show how awesome they are. Whenever it's like, you know, whenever he starts bleeding from his eyes and stuff, I'll be like, okay, thanks for the demonstration. See you later. Yeah, the whole thing is a joke, you know. And again, it speaks to what we're saying about the corrupt nature of people in positions of power. Not just corrupt, but, you know, immoral at the very least, amoral at the very least, or immoral or evil at worst. If you just throw that one up, Scotty, it's an example of this has been talked about before, I think, but Germany deliberately watering down EU embargo on Russian oil. So they'll talk about, let's embargo Russian oil. We're going to cut off all Russian oil supplies, and we're just going to do that. And then they go, hang on a minute, don't we use Russian oil? Don't we need Russian oil for industry? Don't we use Russian oil to heat our homes and stuff? Yeah. But anyway, let's just stop using any of it. And it's like, and that's what comes out in their talks and in the media. But then behind the scenes, at least there are some sane heads still prevailing and saying, you know, we can't actually do without Russian oil. You realize that, right? I mean, you can talk about that all you want, but we can't actually stop buying it, right? I mean, we can buy it from proxies, whatever, but we're not buying Russian oil in the near future, and we're definitely not buying Russian gas in the near future, because it's like, when you just sew up my mouth, like, so
Yeah.
diplomats, and then there's recriminations. Of course, Kiev doesn't like it and all that kind of stuff, but Zelensky's an idiot, like a puppet. Diplomats accused Berlin of hijacking talks in order to secure wider concessions that would benefit its own economy. Notice the way they describe it. Secure wider concessions that would benefit its own economy. What that means is Germany is trying to say, listen, we need Russian oil for our economy to function, our industry. So our industry functioning properly is beneficial to us. So we'd like to not have to not buy Russian oil. Is that okay with everybody? No, you traitor. Slava Ukraine. And it's like, whatever, it's all just talking points, you know. Deliberately watering down the EU's planned embargo on Russian oil imports. It's not a planned embargo. There is no planned embargo, EU-wide at the very least, on Russian oil imports. And like you were mentioning earlier on, what they're all doing and have been doing from day one is buying Russian oil. Von der Leyen actually said it, right? She told it to Klaus Schwab at this week in Davos. She said, you know what we're doing to screw over Putin? We're not buying his oil. Well, we kind of are. I mean, we're not buying it directly from Russia. We're buying it through an intermediary. And that way, Russia doesn't get our money. And it's like, yeah, he does. Russia does get your money. They just get it through an intermediary. Yeah, but he doesn't get as much of it. We get it at a cheap price, and then we sell it on to dupes in the EU at a higher price, and that's passed on down the line to the dupes in the population who are going to freeze this winter.
Exactly. And that speaks to the real reason Hungary's in trouble. Isn't so much because it's insisting on not going along with an embargo on Russian oil. Mm-hmm. It's because Brussels wants to distribute to Hungary how much, when it'll get of what, oil or gas.
Well, that's separate to Hungary. This is Germany.
They're trying to break what they see as Moscow's incursion on their territory. Mm-hmm. They're trying to break the bilateral trade agreements, not just Germany, but the individual Eastern European countries. Russia's whole philosophy is the opposite. They deal case-by-case basis with each country, all the way across to Western Europe, to France. It's not just the neighboring countries. And that is the dirty politics at the heart of this. They want to centralize, again, control of how the energy, who gets to say where it goes, how much and when. Mm-hmm. Centralizing control, and the same with food as well. Right. Brussels, the European Union, ostensibly, I'm putting that in quotes because it's not really as simple as just someone at the European Union arbitrarily decided this. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's the venue, the nodal point through which the Western control system operates in Europe. They've decided that they're going to save Ukraine, they're going to save the world from the famine Putin is trying to start by buying as much as possible of Ukraine's grain right now. Mm-hmm. And then Europe, will sell it on to all the countries in need in North Africa and the Middle East, etc., at a reasonable price.
At a premium.
At a markup.
Yeah.
The fuckers. But the point is control. It's they want to have the control of a large food resource.
Like you said, never let a crisis go to waste, How can we make hay out of this situation?
Whereas, in fact, the thing that they're trying to block people's minds with, which is, it's a total reverse of blockade, where instead the bullshit they're slapping on people's brains is Putin is trying to cause a global famine. In fact, if Putin were to do that, which he isn't, they're actually projecting their own intentions onto him. But if he were, in fact, to make sure that Russia steps in and takes over, there would be a more effective distribution of the wheat, not only because it's proven that it already is from Russia. Russia supplies a quarter of the world's basic grains, I think, wheats and so on. They would actually improve the global situation
Mm-hmm.
in terms of proper allocation, decent pricing, making sure the food, the grains reach Africa and the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a mind job, and like it's basically the complete opposite to reality. What these people claim.
Yeah. The first cargo boat or ship basically left the port, Mariupol port, yesterday, I think. The first one in quite a while, and it was taking steel from Mariupol, from Ukraine or Donbass, to Rostov-on-Don, to Russia, because it's a ship. I don't know, it was a scheduled one, or but you know, it's presented in the media as Russia stealing
Plundering, right.
Ukrainian steel. But the grain thing is also, I mean, they slap sanctions on Russia, which include, to one extent or another, fertilizers and Russian grain shipments, right? I mean, it's kind of like complicated, but it's is the world allowed to buy Russian wheat? You know what I mean? Officially. I mean, it's very murky. They put out these sanctions and nobody knows. If I buy stuff from Russia, I immediately go, okay, there's sanctions on Russia. Can I buy anything from Russia? What can I buy from Russia? Who do I go to find out what I can buy from Russia? And to avoid being sanctioned by the EU or by the Americans. So the Russians, Putin, or the Russian government basically have said that, you know, they'll do what they can to facilitate shipments of grain from the ports, from Mariupol or from Black Sea ports in Ukrainian Black Sea ports. But in order for them to do that, for it to make any sense, you'd have to review the sanctions that you imposed on Russia and what we can and can't. You know what I mean? Do you want grain? Basically saying, like, do you want Ukrainian grain? Okay, we have it now. At least we have a part of it. Do you want to buy it? Or does that infringe your sanctions?
Yeah.
Are you allowed to buy this grain? You better ask yourself if you're allowed to buy this grain. Because we now control it, basically. We've taken this territory. There's silos full of grain. We can ship them out of Mariupol and other Black Sea ports, but we can ship them to Europe if you need them. But do you want them? Are you going to pay us for them?
Yeah. At the moment, they're trying to get everything for free.
Yeah.
Which is force Russia to cut off electricity and gas supplies so far to Finland, Lithuania, because those governments or the receiving companies on the other end of those bilateral agreements with Gazprom, for example, in Lithuania, they were basically saying, well, the sanctions mean we can't pay you.
Yeah, but we'll take your stuff.
But just keep sending it, forcing Russia to actually do the dreaded thing that the Americans warned about for so long, cut off the gas to Lithuania.
Yeah, well, that should be
And then the headline, of course, is, there you go, you see, Russia cut off the gas to Lithuania.
Well, like we were talking about earlier on about the change in narrative, the change in tone of Western reporting, what's going on in Ukraine. Apparently, throw up that RT one there. You know, this guy Arestovich, he's a creepy dude. He's a high-profile Ukrainian presidential advisor, Alexei Arestovich. So apparently he, in an interview on Wednesday, in response to, and this wasn't really publicized, you probably didn't see this very much in the Western media, but apparently he was responding to what he knew were suggestions by Western powers, the US probably in particular, and the Brits, that Ukraine needs to really seriously think about giving up some territory. Like, basically, you're not winning. We tried to ship a load of weapons to you, and it just didn't work. It was never going to work. But anyway, we made some money off it. But anyway, now that you really things are looking bad, you need to think about coming to some agreement with the Russians and giving up Ukrainian territory. So he responded by saying, "Go fuck yourselves with such proposals, you dumb fucks." To trade Ukrainian territory even a little bit. Are you fucking crazy? Our children are dying. Soldiers are stopping shells with their own bodies, and they are telling us how to sacrifice our territories. This will never happen. So that's the voice of Zelensky, basically, apparently. It's Zelensky's voice. He holds the same opinion. So the Ukrainian leadership is one and the same, at least in the same mind. They're of the same mind, effectively, as the West, but they're at the front line, right? And the Ukrainian people, obviously, most particularly, are on the front line. They're the ones who are, maybe living and dying or suffering the trials of war. the Americans just can walk away. Say, well, we tried. It was fun. Well, it lasted. We made a bunch of money. See you later. Bye bye. Just you deal with Russia. Go and talk to Russia. They'll work it out with Russia, will you? Just whatever. I don't know. What are the political realities? What's the military realities on the ground? Do you have any soldiers in Donbass? No. Who's in Donbass? Russia. Maybe you should give it to them. Go fuck yourself. What do you want to do? Give us more weapons.
Nukes. Give us nukes.
Let us nuke them. No, we have to go. I have to go to the Davos here. I have to go and talk to Klaus Schwab. I'll talk to you later, okay?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? So they're nuts, obviously. And I mean, I don't know. That's the bastard children of America right there in the Ukrainian government, you know?
Yep. It's exactly the class of people who produced the leadership of the United States of America.
Yeah.
Brzezinski, Eastern European, anti-Soviet.
A few stirred up Muslims.
The Kagan family, Kaganovich, Russian emigres, Russian Empire emigres, Lithuanian, I think.
Yeah.
Again, violently anti-Russian from their grandfather on down to the current crop, Newland and Kagan. Applebaum, Polish emigre, likes Brzezinski. I mean, they come to America, they rise to the top, and then they completely orient its entire foreign policy on hating Russia, like with a vehemence that, only is shared with this crop,
right?
Current crop in Kiev.
Like that's a viable life strategy.
Madeleine Albright.
I hate
Not
Russia.
her real surname, by the way. Eastern European, brought up, reared on, gets the power in the United States on the fuel of killing Russians.
Kicked out of Belgrade.
Oh, the other guy, Soros.
Yeah. Yeah, they're a weird clique.
Russia. You wonder why. You wonder how this erupted a few years ago. I can imagine you're an ordinary American. I mean, like generations back, you're American. It doesn't matter where you're from, you're American. And then, like, in 2014, it begins, and it picks up in 2016, of course, Russiagate. And then they're starting to talk to me. It's like, Russia. I'm fucking sick of hearing about where is this coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's your current leadership. And it speaks to their mind and how freaking obsessed they are about bringing down Putin's Russia, they'll say. But really, it's
owning
a
Russia.
bit more
basically.
than that. It's about...
It's too big. Russia's too big for them to have any real faith in their dreams of ruling the world. Russia and China standing in the way. You don't. If you don't have Russia and China, you don't really have the world at all. Last one. Stick it up there, Scotty. Interesting little tidbit from. It's actually an audio leak that details China's plan to invade Taiwan. And of course, we saw this week that when asked about what would happen if China invaded Taiwan, Sleepy Joe said that they would defend Taiwan militarily. And then his own people
had to walk it back.
Had to go, no, we'll do the same thing in Ukraine. We'll sell Taiwan a shitload of useless weapons, make a shitload of money, and then walk away. Doesn't sound like a very, very friendly strategy, but so it's better not to say that and say, yes, we will support them militarily. We won't defend them. We'll support them. What's the difference? I don't know. No boots on the ground, basically. But it's interesting, yeah. So audio leak suggesting that, whether it's true or not, it's on a Chinese YouTube channel, and it's in Chinese, obviously. But it seems to be possibly, maybe authentic. Certainly, it's real in the sense that the Chinese do have a plan to invade Taiwan, that they may get to sooner rather than later, maybe later this year. And when that happens, I don't think anything's going to happen. America's not going to do anything at that point.
No.
Not a thing.
No. It's over. It's all this is just screaming, screaming past the graveyard.
Although China would have to be provoked to invade Taiwan because of continued American, provoking of China, by their activities in Taiwan. I don't know what it would cause. I don't know if the Chinese actually need a specific red line, or if have a specific red line that would be crossed, or if they have a plan, they're just waiting on the time to do it, basically, because America has already gone far enough in terms of sticking, troops and weapons, and has, got its claws into Taiwan many years ago, and China has just decided that, that has to change. It's already gone too far, and we'll just choose our own time, or if there'll be some particular, event that would provoke the Chinese to respond. But I don't think the Chinese would do that. I don't think they'll respond to.
No, it's their timeline now. I think the US has already played its trump card.
Yeah.
COVID.
Yeah.
That was their last trump card to stop the rise of China, to derail it. Didn't work. 2020, economic growth 5%. Maybe it was 2% revised down. Still grew. And last year, back up to 7. This year, 10 again. I mean, it's unstoppable. And this will continue. It's projected to continue every year until 2050. At which point, there will be, 1.5 billion middle-class Chinese. And the only question is for the rest of the world, will there be a concomitant number of military bases, Chinese military bases all around the world? They have one that we know of overseas in Djibouti.
Right.
Which, interestingly, is right next to Somalia, where Biden saying, actually, we're going back in, So maybe there's some ongoing efforts to sustain hegemony, but it's failing. It's such a... They're losing.
Yeah.
They're losing. The only matter is... the only issue is... but it's not the only issue. It's everything. It's how much damage
is going to be caused by...
It's going to be incurred, because this will not be a peaceful transition.
Because it won't go quietly.
The British Empire peacefully transferred to Washington.
Nothing changed.
Because they were of one culture, class, race, ethos. That was easy. This is...
This
they really do look at them and go...
There's no one to transfer to.
Yeah.
These
people
the end.
are barbarians. As much as, they talk, and they welcome a few of them into their club. You're a globalist like us now, but on the whole, they look at them and they go, no. It's the world... I think they would... I don't think they consciously do it, but I think they would prefer to see a world on fire than a world successfully managed.
Well, if you won't transition power peacefully, then it happens violently, effectively, in the same political transitions and stuff. If you
within a country,
within
as
a
within,
country.
as without.
Yeah, so globally it's the same. If you don't see the writing on the wall, realize that your time is done, and then let things go. If you fight to the last Ukrainian or last Taiwanese or last European, whatever, or last American, then you seed chaos, and you don't care, and you try and make a buck out of the crisis, Yeah, okay. So I think we'll leave it there for this week, folks. It's been pretty much over 2 hours. Have you got anything else to say, or are you all?
I'm all out of bubblegum.
All out of bubblegum. So you're going to kick some ass?
Definitely.
Whose ass are you going to kick?
Nah, no one's. I'm going outside.
You're going outside to kick ass?
Yeah, I've been indoors all day. Are we going to be doing a show next Sunday?
Maybe. Not. Don't know. We have an event.
Scotty, are we going to be doing a show next Sunday? You're deciding.
You might be doing a show next week.
Scotty's got an event. Do you want to tell them what your event is?
My event is on Saturday. I'm getting married.
There you go.
So it depends on what happens at the ceremony and the party that
at the
follows.
Nuptials. Yeah.
I'm guessing no one's going to feel like doing a show next week, but we'll see.
We could do
maybe.
We could do a horribly hungover show if you wouldn't mind that. I mean, we could just sit here and go, oh God, I hate my life.
It might actually be a pretty good, funny show. You never know.
Yeah,
so
yeah. We could just
we'll wing it
if we feel like it. Yeah, we'll see, but we'll let you know closer to the time anyway. Yeah. So anyway, thanks for watching, listening, commenting. Always good to. What does he say? Who feels cooler in a Hawaiian shirt, Joe, Niall, or Scott? Me. I feel cooler. I am cooler in a Hawaiian shirt. Anyway, yeah. Thanks for watching, listening, and commenting. Don't forget to smash all the buttons. We'll be back possibly next week. We don't know. We'll let you know. Until then, have a good evening, day, morning, whatever it is, wherever you are. See you later.
Thanks for watching.
See ya.
Bye.
Can't stop the signal now.